They say the band is back together, and that's what we are. Talking franchising for all of our fans out there, all 6 of you. We're here and ready for duty. Coming up next. All right, I'm going to tee this up. Charles, you're going to go first. Brent, you're going to go second. But the topic today is how to franchise a business the right way. So it's not about whether you want to franchise your business, it's how to do it the right way. And I think the 2 of you have deep knowledge on brands that have come out of the gates and just did it the right way. And I think the 2 of you and the 3 of us have seen many brands that have done it the wrong way. So Charles, it's a wide open blank whiteboard. Brand X says, I'm going to franchise my business. I'm going to do everything you tell me to do. How do you start brand X off?
Mindset. The top thing is mindset, right? So brand X, well, before Brent called you a dumbass before we went live. So I'm going to refer to this as not being a dumbass when you franchise your business, but it's
not being Nick when you franchise your business.
It's mindset. I think the biggest factor for a new franchisor is to have the mindset and understanding that when you franchise your business, that franchising process, even though you become a franchisor, have an operations manual, can legally sell franchises in 90 to 120 days. The process of becoming a franchisor is really 24 months, right? To set a foundation. I think too many startups don't approach it that way. Consultants don't, and you lead to launch failures.
Brent?
Agreed. And yeah, I think the commonalities are, well, I go the other way, right? Here's where I see brands get into trouble. They, and this is an extension of the mentality statement too, Charles. They fail to recognize that they're now entirely in a different business model, right? They are in the business of serving franchisees. It's akin to a customer service business than it is to painting houses or selling burgers or whatever it is that their business does. And I think that those brands that come in and recognize that, wow, I have to learn this, I know nothing, they're the brands that tend to do better faster. And so coming in with that mentality is important. And then I think it's really about the customer service side of the franchisee from there. The biggest things, like when I see a brand with really strong training, a new young brand that's put more effort and emphasis into initial training, it's a good indicator for us that, okay, they get it and this brand's going to do well because they understand the assignment here. So I think mentality is one, and really understanding that their entire business relies on the success of these folks coming in. You've got to go above just the bare minimum, which is a decent operations manual and an FDD. You have to start looking at it as, how can I serve these franchisees? How can I make them successful as quickly as possible? And there's a lot we can dive into there, but mentality is huge for sure.
I'm going to share a quick story. It's actually, Charles, it's one of your clients, Fantastic, that is just starting to franchise. I talked with him yesterday. And so we were talking about his journey. He opened up one location, wasn't thinking about franchising. He just saw him and his wife saw there was a gap in the marketplace. And basically it's like science and slime and things that kids like to get their hands dirty with. And frankly, adults like doing that stuff too. But he's like, let's build a birthday party solution that's all built around science experiments and let kids get dirty and make slime at the end of it. Nothing magical about that other than you're learning STEM through enjoyable learning. I said to him, what's winning for you? And he goes, from a franchise standpoint, he goes, in essence, I'm not going to come up with an answer for this. I'm going to let the pathway work itself out. He goes, if I come up with a number, then I feel like I'm going to have to say yes to people that I might not want to say yes to, because I set this goal and I want to hit this magical number that's non-existent. And I said to him, I go, I want to pause here for a second, because said, you're in the 1% of franchisors that actually have that mindset. If I said, really, what are you trying to do? They're like, I want to sell. I would be happy selling 5 or 10 in the first year. Like, it's such a weird thing to hear brands talk about. I would be happy with 5. Most likely you're not. Brent, your data point was like 67 or 87% of franchisors that franchise don't sell a unit in the first 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so you take this and like, this guy's got the right mindset. He's slow built this into a business, and he's not unrealistic about growth. I think that all fits into what both of you were saying from a mindset standpoint. The other side is, and Brent, I think this is a very important comment that you said. It's a second business. Like, you're actually a multi-business operator when you go from operating corporate to now operating franchise. They're 2 different models. Corporate, you're really hyper focused on your consumer. So in Raj's example, he's trying to get parents to sign their kids up for their birthday parties to be hosted there. On the franchise side, he's trying to get entrepreneurial mindsets to buy into the business, to want to do a duplication, to invest their life savings into it so that he doesn't have to on the next investment. And he needs to invest into training and support on them. And I don't know that if business operators were to zoom out, I don't know that they really pay attention to the fact that you've just now opened up a second business. You are a multi-business operator. And therefore, this is the Achilles heel for all startup franchisors, and it's capital. And the capital, in my opinion, works in 2 ways. One is you got to have the cash. Like, maybe 0.5% of businesses that turn in franchise have this like magical unicorn moment where they have growth without needing much cash to put into it. Put those aside. That doesn't happen often. You're going to need cash to market the shit out of this thing. And you're also going to have to cross-apply that same mindset to the investors that are coming in. Franchisees are investors. And sometimes we don't qualify them as investors. We qualify them as people that might have enough money to open up our business. Now, these are business investors that are going to invest in growing our business, because that mindset of long-term growth, eventually we want to exit and make a lot of money. And so that investor, I always say it's the rule of 3, that whatever your investment is, they better have enough cash or access to financing to get 3 of these open. If they don't, then you've just decreased the odds of success for that franchise buyer. Now, ultimately, everything I just said is mindset. You can use mindset to gain capital, but in my opinion, mindset, approach, what Brent said, and capital, those 3 things are essential, in my opinion. Charles, any comments on that?
Yeah. If capital is limited, which even if it's not, back to my earlier point about those first 24 months, I'll call it seasoning. If you cannot organically attract at least 5 franchisee candidates, not saying 5 deals, but qualified franchisee candidates organically, then you're not ready yet. And maybe you have your FDD, you have your website, you have all these things, but you don't have a compelling vision, you don't have a compelling brand, and you're not ready. And if that's the case, any money you spend on marketing is going to be wasted. So those first 24 months is really, and that's why we do the FranX Masterclass and whatnot on Brand Story. If you can't organically attract and magnetize your brand in those 24 months, then there's a ton more work to do. And it shouldn't all be done in the first 90, 120 days. You should be on constantly pushing and working hard for 24 months to get that initial launch ready, your messaging, your story, your website, version 3. And so many don't do it. And then they go to the conferences and they go to the regional things. They have conversations with brokers, and people don't understand their brand because they didn't set the right foundation.
Yeah, I think the foundation is key. Mentality, we're circling back on it again, but it's so important. You see, like what we see is so many brands coming in and they try to compare themselves against the brands that they see all day on LinkedIn or in press, and brands that are doing 20, 30, 40, 50 deals a year. So there's certain few brands that come out of the gates and do 10, 20 or whatever it is they do the first year. And they think, well, that's what I have to do or I'm losing. And they don't understand that that's the exception. These are brands that work with powerful FSOs. There's a bunch of them out there. Obviously, Fastlane, Raintree. These are brands that work with the mainlands that work with guys like you. But it gets to a certain point where they get into this spotlight, and brands think that that's what I got to do. At FranCamp, Nick, your conference, there was a brand there, and Charles, you know them too. It's a coffee concept. I got a LinkedIn email. They're in one of my mentor groups there, and I got a LinkedIn email from this person, and they said, "Thank you so much. We learned so much. We were so intimidated. We've only done 5 or 6 units, and we were so intimidated. And there's just so much. So everybody there kind of knew more than us type of mentality." And I thought, wow, this is the exact reason this brand's going to be successful. They're humble. They know that they're happy, by the way, with their 5 or 6 in the first year. They feel really good about it. They don't want to grow any faster than that, but they're humble, and they're just willing to learn. And they think, and there's a positive side to that mentality coming in when you start your franchise, but it makes me a little bit sad to think, no, we've all got our issues. We've all got our insecurities. We don't all know everything. Brands all have their problems. And I promise you, even the ones that are doing 10 or 20 in the first year have a lot bigger problems than what you do if you're only doing 1 or 2 in most cases as well. So it's just, again, I think we're circling back to mentality, but you got to get it right. And it's hard for new Zors to do it.
Glad you brought that example up. The humbleness of the leader or the founder is probably, it goes back to what I said about Raj, that he's saying, I'm not going to let a number dictate the goal. I'm going to let basically life work itself out. And I hear that in the coffee concept too. It's like, we're just going to continue to do the right thing and do the best that we can and try to grow this thing. I think like we've all talked about it, that founder story or people stories is what ends up selling a business. I was just telling Charles before I got on here, I was talking to this garage company that Charles also works with. And he's telling me his story. He's like, I'm a retired state trooper. My partner is a retired fireman. I'm like, well, where's that story? He goes, I mean, it's a good point, because he's like, every time I go close a deal on the consumer side, I talk about that, and they're like, thank you for your service. I'm like, man, but why is this buried? Like, there's something about first responders behind your business that could totally propel this forward. I go, shouldn't you be dialed in on just trying to get first responders in here as franchise owners? He's like, that's exactly where we should be going. But I think about that. He was also at FranCamp, which he was saying the same thing. He's like, I felt lost. He goes, the only reason I went there is because I heard there was a free Cubs game. And then I got so much more value out of it. He's like, I was just shocked by what was happening. And look, what we're doing right now, I think conversational wise, I mean, Charles might disagree with me on this, but none of us have the exact key pathway for any brand, because when you start looking at the math equation, it's like, what market are you in? What's your investment? How much training are you putting in? What's the quality of your product? How does your food cost look? Like, there's so many different variables that it's what we're talking about are holistic things. But if we break it down, we're talking about mentality. And then Charles, I think it's brilliant what you said, like the governor is, can you get 5 candidates excited about this business, not sell 5 candidates excited about this business organically? I mean, using the coffee example, how would you advise a brand do that?
Well, exactly the example, Brent and the client, that was the strategy. It was, hey, focus on the organic reach of the brand, magnetize the brand, and let's over focus on onboarding the right franchisees out of the gate, and then stop selling. Support over support. That was our game plan going in. I don't want to take credit because they executed at an exceptional level. You go to their website, they're telling their brand story, which is not why buy our franchise. It's why did we do this, and how our customers changed the world. And they organically attracted their first franchisees. And now part of our game plan was pause, support over support. I think that's a winning strategy. But again, to Brent's point, to your point, these all revolve around mindset. I know, one day if a brand goes to Raintree, what is Brent going to be looking for? Well, Brent's going to be looking for the validation of those 5 franchisees. Brent's going to be looking for the unit economics. Brent's going to be looking for the humble mindset and that winning mindset. And so you got to reverse engineer it. So I think they're on their way. And even if they didn't sell those first 5, I would challenge that. If you're not getting that pull, you're doing something wrong. And this is where I feel bad, because we have our clients, they're out in the franchise jungle. And then what comes next? I get emails or whatever. A development company, nothing close to Raintree, says, we'll do all these things for you if you give up X. And I know it's not real. And I know I can't refer them to Brent yet because they need to mature more. And so now how do you guide them? So that mindset's key. The seasoning is critical.
I mean, I think there's some magic and this is giving Brent a pat on the back, but there's some magic when you look at brands that Raintree works with.
Yeah.
If you're a buyer, we'll flip it over to the buyer side. You want to know the secret. Brent's not an idiot. He's going to take brands that he believes are sellable, and the only reason a brand is sellable is because they have the foundational elements. And so if you're like, you could certainly go use a franchise broker, but they're not vetting brands like Brent does. That if you're a Raintree brand, Brent says no to all these other brands because they don't meet the qualifications. So for the buyer side, you want to eliminate being blindsided by some bullshit. Look at the vetted brands of companies like Raintree. And if you're a franchisor, be honored to be rejected by Raintree, because you probably just learned a nugget about your business that you have to go correct before you're ready for growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see brands doing the reverse of what they should in that regard, right? So what we're talking about here is brands that'll go and get their FDD done, their ops manual done. They'll have their training programs built. They'll negotiate some volume discounts. They'll have everything done to set up by the book. Then they'll go and start spending 2, 3, 5, 10,000 a month. And realize that franchise lead generation and sales is super hard, and they'll waste a year or so, 100 grand or whatever it is the number is, and then they'll come and say, okay, now we need an FSO, and then they'll try and they'll go, and you look at like Raintree. We've taken on some brands with 0 franchisees, but we've turned down 1, 2, 3, 400 of those brands with 0 franchisees before them. So it's the 0.1% of brands that we'd actually take without validation. Fastlane, even more so. I think they rarely take anything with, or we rarely take anything with less than 5 franchisees. And so what does that mean? If you can't do it yourself and you're not really equipped yet or have the qualifications to work with an elite FSO, what do? When we look at what they've done, usually they've skipped that stage that you mentioned, Charles. They've just gone in and started buying leads, when that's really not the best way to do it originally. Every brand will have should have a pretty strong customer list. And so putting a lot of energy into that customer list. There's usually a couple of good franchisees who know the model, right? They appreciate it, they know it, and they may have the skill sets and the financials, and you usually can find a couple good franchisees there. Then even things as simple as the founder, right? Did you reach out to your personal network? Have you been marketing what you're doing on LinkedIn? Are you talking about this? Because you may have people in your network that are a great fit and would love to get involved. And again, it's sad that brands waste a year and a lot of money to think, oh, okay, that's all I needed to do. They'll go back and do it. They'll get their first few franchisees in. They'll hopefully get them profitable and get them validating, and then they get to work with a Fastlane or a Raintree, and they can go from there. But it seems that a lot of brands skip that. They get so excited about buying leads, and then they have some problems later on.
I mean, this is where like the mindset of not slow and methodical. It's more like when it's right, it happens. And if you continue to just do the blocking and tackling, eventually someone's going to say, oh, you're a franchise. Oh, I'm interested. And when they come in, now you treat them with respect, not like I'm franchisor and they're a franchisee. You treat them like they're a part of your family, and you champion their success. And then you duplicate that a few different times. And even if that takes 3 years, like sometimes they take, like it's going to take some time to grow. And then if you do those things the right way, you might go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16. Now all of a sudden you've built up great momentum that could take off. And that's where, like, I think the franchising your business the right way totally is mindset, and totally is patience. And patience might be one day, patience might be 5 years, but a little bit of patience and then hyper focusing unit level economics and capital growth. You can win at this, but sometimes the mindset's just backwards. It's false expectations and irritation and jealousy over other brands. But, I think if you continue to have conversation with people like us, whether it's the three of us or someone else like us, then you can lean on people that have gone through the battle scars and can say, like, it's their best advice, Charles, what's your final thought?
All the commonalities of mindset, which really comes down to you need to have a mindset of serving others. And when you become a franchisor, if you're really thoughtful of that, how are you going to serve those franchisees? And backcasting from what is it going to look like for their family when they sell that business? And I know that's far off, but if you have that service mindset, I think you win.
Brent?
We skimmed over, you made the comment, Nick, really quick, and I just want to reiterate it because it's so important. You have to be capitalized properly. Franchising is the ultimate example of you get what you pay for. And if you try and skimp on setting up your ops manual, your FDD, and you try and fly through and get straight to some deals and do some cheap deals or whatever it is in the development side, there's no cutting corners in this business. Come in well capitalized or wait until you can.
There you have it. We've solved the magic of franchising again. The band is back together. Brent's back calling me a dumbass before we get started, and then Charles has to call that out. This is Fran X. See you guys.